cmpradio.net, the voice of Chester.
Donna, also known as Donna Janel, CEO and founder of Parenting with a Purpose. Our strive here at the podcast is to reach every home, whether it's single moms, married, single dads, whatever it is, foster parents, whatever, just bringing the ownership and responsibility and nobility back into parenting. Get comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. And all parents need some help and guidance, and I'm just here to be a guide. Hey everybody, welcome back to Parenting with a Purpose. I am your host, Donna Janel, where we are here weekly at 7 p.m. on Thursdays just to give you some updates and insights of what's going on in the parenting world. You know, our theme here is parents are bows and our children are arrows, and they will land wherever we send them. Not overnight, not next week, maybe not even a year or two, but they will land eventually if we provide them with the tools and techniques of how life skills, basically. If we provide them with those things that eventually they will land. You know, as kids, most kids are pretty much rebellious, so they don't really kind of hear it when they're young. But when they get older, trust me, they land where we send them. As you know, we're bringing back the responsibility and nobility and beauty back into parenting. We know parenting, it's a hard knock life out here, right? Parenting is not for the weak. Parenting is definitely not easy. If anybody tell you that parenting is easy, I need a conversation with that person, because parenting is not easy. It doesn't matter if you make $100, $100,000, $1 million, $1 trillion. Parenting is not easy. There are so many different situations that we dealing with another human being. You know, parents, we don't own our children. You know, we're not the master and they're the slave. So, you know, parenting, those kids got personalities. They got thoughts. They got attitudes, especially in the later years of life, teenage years. They have all these different things that's going on. So it's definitely not for the weak, all right? So we are here at Parenting with a Purpose. We're going to be talking about tonight about healing our broken pieces so that we don't bleed all over our children. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy and probably sound a little out there. Broken pieces, bleeding, all that. Just by trade, I'm a nurse, so blood don't mean nothing to me. Like, I can use those words so easily. But it's true, though, because a lot of times, most people, either we're parenting out of fear, we're parenting out of how we were parented, we're parenting how we seen people parent on television, or we may even seen our neighbors. So there's a lot of different influences regarding parenting. And sometimes we get it right, sometimes we struggle a little bit. As you know, as a parent, like, that happens. Listen, I'm a mom of 4. I am a divorcee, and I got 4 kids, and let me tell you, it is not easy. My oldest is 24, got a 17-year-old and 2 15-year-olds. And right now, the journey that I'm in parenting, it's a struggle. And I know you guys can relate out there, because these teenage years, I'm telling you, if your parents have ever been tested, it has been in the teenage years, I'm telling you. And it's interesting because you raise these kids, right? And you put everything that you need to put in them, right? And then once they get in that adolescents and the different chemicals and hormones changing, and they start thinking they know stuff. They have an attitude, which we want our children to grow, right? We want our children to have a voice. We want our children to be able to hold their own, because that's what we train them to do, right? However, those teenage years get a little rough where they start thinking like they could do more than what they should, and they can kind of attitude back at you. And even the sweetest kids that you raise, I'm telling you, it happens. Because there's some of my teenagers, like, they were just the sweetest, quiet, respectful kids. And now that they're literally like this age, it's just like, okay, where did this come? And how do you think this about to play out? Okay? And I'm one of those parents. I'm an intentional parenting, but I find myself lately being an angry parent, or a parent that yell. I don't even like to yell. Like, I'm the type of person, like, if anybody knows me, yelling is not my thing. Like, I will literally look at you and walk away. I like to remain silent because my words are very intentional. My actions are intentional, right? So I don't want to go off or flip out on people, because when people are yelling, most people don't hear anything. And I want you to hear what I'm saying. So I kind of try to lay back and really just have a conversation once all the emotions go down. But I found myself lately, it ain't that easy right now with the teenagers for me to fall back and just be like, okay, let's all get along and let's have a conversation. It's not that easy. So I know that y'all feeling me out there. I know that y'all got some issues going on with your teenagers too, because I've talked to a lot of parents, and we had this conversation recently, and everybody they're just like, I don't know what's going on with these teenagers, right? And the crazy thing is that it's not even just the teenagers now, though. A lot of people, well, pre-adolescents, like 11, 12 age. My kids at 11, 12, they really didn't give me too many problems. It's just the age now that they seem like they want to be a little different. And, it is so easy to go into how you were parented or the way other people parent their children. It is so easy because we're really all just looking for help on how to do this thing, right? There's no perfect parent. There's no perfection in this. So we're all just trying to figure this thing out as we go along. Now, some of us may take some classes. Some of us may do some little research. I find myself doing a lot of research, and I read and I take a lot of classes. But all that stuff don't necessarily honestly prepare you for some of the stuff that come back from these kids, these conversations. So it's literally it's almost like on-the-job training, right? And with on-the-job training, sometimes we have some hiccups, sometimes we don't. Sometimes things go nice and smoothly, and sometimes things don't go as smoothly. So I think that as we continue on this parenting journey, because parenting never ends, even if your children is an adult, it just never ends, because then you have grandchildren, great-grandchildren. It's just never ending with parenting. However, I think the way we parent does change over time, right? So the things that, I've had Kelly and Art on the show last week, and we were talking about the things that, how they were parented and how they changed some things in their parenting. They began to start parenting like their parents was parenting them, right? And then Kelly had mentioned that she found out that as far as when we talk about disciplining our kids or beating our kids, she realized that was not working for her children, and particularly her daughter. And she starts seeing that relationship was about to be severed because of the way that she was disciplined. And so she had to learn how to do something different. So that's when I say parenting, it changes over time of how we respond and how we react to our children. It definitely does. As they grow, as we grow, we don't, really see things the way that we used to see them. Like, I know, for example, for me, when I was growing up, I've always said, listen, first of all, I didn't want no kids. I'm gonna put it out there. I didn't want no kids. But I believe early on, when I was probably like 5 or 6 or something like that, I used to always try to take care of people's kids. Like, I loved babies at the time. And I was like, when I get older, I'm going to have kids. But then life happened, right? Some things happened in my life. And then I was like, oh, no, I'm not being a parent to nobody. And that was literally just fear of that I was going to parent my children the way my parents parent me, which, no slight to my parents, but I was fumbled. Right? No slight to them, but I was fumbled. And I believe my parents did the best thing that they could for what they had at the time, or even how they were being parented. Because when you think about parenting, it is really generational. It is transgenerational. Like, you literally transfer what you've been taught into your kids and then their kids, and that's really how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to impart different things into your each generation. However, sometimes we impart the negative stuff, the stuff that's just not so good. And it's no, I think that's just the way people are raised, right? That's the way that they're grew up on. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we should allow it or we should make it as an excuse of how we parent, right? Because, I remember reading, matter of fact, it was like a TikTok or something, and this young man said that you're not responsible for how your parents raised you, but you are responsible how you raise yourself as an adult, right? And then that transfers to how you raise yourself as an adult is how you're going to raise your children as well. So yeah, we're not responsible for what happened when we were growing up or even early adulthood, right? But once we grow and mature, we realize, okay, something's wrong, something's not right, something's not flowing the way it needs to flow. There's a lot of confusion and commotion, and what we need is like clarity on some things. So, one of the quotes that I read by Dan Siegel, he said, in the absence of reflection, history often repeats itself, right? And we know that because we can look at the world. Like, if we don't reflect on the things that has taken place when we think about slavery, right? And I know I probably always mention about slavery, but I really had this thought, and then a couple other people last week, we had the conversation that sometimes in parenting, we are parenting as if we are back in the slave game. Like, we have a master and we have slaves. Parents are the masters and our children are the slaves. And with that type of mentality, the master mentality really was to beat you to do what you needed to do. And there was no questions, ifs, ands, or buts, right? And somehow that translated into parenting, where you're going to do what I say, and that's it. And when you don't do what I say, you're going to get beat. No matter how you get beat, you're going to get beat. And that's what it seems like. I believe that's just more of a generational and back to the thought of, like, you're going to do what I say no matter what. I found myself, I don't beat my kids, or I've never really was a type person that will physically discipline my kids. And that's just based on my own parenting experiences, my own fear, and my own brokenness in regards to parenting, why I decided not to do my kids that way. Now, thinking back on it, I probably could have, did a little something, not beat them, but I probably could have straightened them out a little differently than I have. I don't know, maybe they wouldn't be as sassy as they are as teenagers right now if I did some of that shaking a little bit in the booty area. I don't know, but I don't have that experience because I haven't done it. I've had the experience where I had to pop my kids, for doing a little bit too much or something like that, pop them, but not necessarily beating them or disciplining them in a physical way. But I know parents who have done that, and I know how it worked for some kids, and it didn't work for others. But a lot of times, believe it or not, like, we think like, okay, this is what I had to do, and this is what I have to do in order to keep them from doing a particular thing. But in all actuality, we're literally just putting that fear into them, and then when they're out of our presence, they end up doing it. Because you can talk to any therapist right now, any psychologist right now, most people are coming in dealing with childhood issues, right? How they were treated as a child, how they had and didn't have. And, you got parents, who give their child a little bit too much, right? And you think that that's cool. Those adults are in therapy. Let me tell you all that now. We got those parents who couldn't give enough. Those adults are in therapy right now dealing with childhood issues. So it's not a perfect way of parenting, right? So our job is to heal ourselves to the point where we don't begin to parent out of pain, out of fear, out of anger. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some situations you need to be angry about, right? There are some things where, say, for example, if you've given your children all the tools, particularly you're giving your child all the tools to help them succeed in school, right? And they just decide they want, because they teens, right? They just decide they want to do what they want to do. They don't want to show up to class. They don't want to do the work. Okay, now I'm angry because I've given you everything that you needed and more, and then you just decide to go another way, right? I'm angry. But I also believe that we have to we can be angry, and our children should see us angry. But what do we do with the anger? That's the question. Because sometimes, when you're angry, these emotions fly. You got that fight or flight situation, and you ready to go off. Like you ready to go off. And sometimes we go off on our kids, and we do more damage than good. I got another thing. I've been doing, a lot of research out here. It says, research has clearly demonstrated that our children's attachment to us will be influenced by what happened to us when we were young if we don't come to process and understand those experiences. And that's by Dan Siegel. So basically what he's saying is that if we don't deal with our issues, our children are going to have those issues as well. And we know that. We know that if you're a person who work, if you're a person who like to work, your kids see you work, so then they're going to be able to develop these habits of, you don't work, you don't eat, right? That's the old saying. It's biblical too. If a man don't work, they don't eat. So when your children see you are out here working, then they know that, we don't sit around the house. We actually go out there and put in the work, right? So that's the same thing. If our children see us behaving in a particular way or treating a particular way, that gets ingrained in them, and then they begin to live their life that way or treat other people that way. So children, they don't need perfection though. So I think there's a common misconception of like wholeness and wellness with perfection, right? That's not that. We're not perfect. There's nobody perfect. There's no perfect parent. There's no perfect children. We're perfectly imperfect, right? So you're perfect for who you are, but there's no perfect person in the world. So I think that sometimes with parents, we try to be, particularly, I don't know, I can speak from experience, and then I can speak from coaching other parents, some other parents. So I'm not speaking for all parents, but particularly for me, I literally was parenting, so the way that everything that I didn't have as a child, where I felt like I wasn't loved, where I had the rejection, when I had the abandonment, right? When I was physically abused, when I was sexually abused, right? So all these things is now in my space, and then I have children, right? So the first thing that you want to do is provide safety for your kids, at least for me. Everything, nobody touch them, they can't go nowhere. Everybody on lockdown, right? Because I don't want anything bad to happen to my children. And because I would be devastated, right? So, but with that comes a lot of control. We begin to control our children or control the situations. And then the minute something happened, we're like, whoa. We kind of lose control of ourselves because we're like, I put A, B, and C in place, right? But life be lifing. Kids are kids. They have their own mind, their own personality, just like we do. And there's just situations that we just have no control over, point blank period. You can do everything possible by the textbook, if there is a real textbook out there. You can do everything possible, and then things just happen. That's just the way it is. But I found myself early in my parenting, really, especially with my oldest daughter, who's 24 now. I didn't let her do nothing. Like, I didn't let her stay the night over nobody's house. I didn't let her really do too much of anything. And at the time, when me and my ex-husband separated, like, I literally was not even letting her stay the night with him and his mom during the week. I'm like, nope. I don't want her school schedule to change. You can have her every other weekend, like we plan. But to the fact that I was like, no, you can't have her during the week, because I was trying to be in control of that situation. Because I was like, I don't know what's going on over there, but over here, kids go to bed at a particular time. They eat a particular thing. And it was like I was trying to run their household and my household at the same time, which doesn't, when I look back on it, that doesn't make sense, right? So I believe I kind of did some damage there because I didn't allow her to be with her dad. And my daughter's a daddy's girl, right? The oldest, she's a daddy's girl. So I didn't allow her to be with her dad during the week based on my fear and also my control, right? So as she grew, and I start to realize that she really needed her dad even more. So then I allowed more opportunity for her to be with her dad. And then and with my son, like, I literally start to shift the parenting because I realized that I did some stuff that probably, I could have did better with her, right? And I realized that. So then I allowed my son, same thing with his dad, which is the same dad. They have the same parent. My kids have the same father. And I allow him to begin to start staying the night over there during the week and kind of splitting him differently just so that he could have the best of both worlds, because I kind of fumbled the first time, but I didn't know. I was 19, and as I grew in my parenting, I started learning, like, okay, this is not right. Why are you not allowing her to stay over there during the week? What's the real issue? So I had to figure out. I'm telling you, parenting will make you start looking at yourself differently. Parenting will make you start to heal and grow, right? Because sometimes we don't even know our own issues, or it will be an issue until we are parenting. When we're doing things, and we're like, well, why are we doing that? Or that doesn't look right. And then we're like, oh, I still have some areas that I need growing. I have some areas that needs healing, right? And I also think one of the other reasons why I didn't allow my kids to be outside of my space really is because I didn't want to feel abandoned, right? I didn't want to feel rejected. Now that I look back on it, back then I didn't realize that, but now as I'm growing, right, I'm like, okay, if they're not here, it's just me. They left me, right? But that, again, comes from childhood, being abandoned, being rejected. So because those areas weren't healed for me, I began to treat my kids a particular way, almost as if they were my property, even though I gave birth to them, as if I was really owning them and controlling them based on abandonment and fear or rejection. That's one of those areas that unless you start parenting and you really can see that those issues are there, because you can see how you start treating your kids. Not, it's not like you're intentionally or being malice of trying to control your kids. It's literally you just coming from a place of hurt and you don't want them to be hurt, right? So I got a couple examples of when I talk about parenting and what happens when we're younger and how it starts to unconsciously affect our kids, right? So you have a father who repeats his father judgmental parenting with his own son. For example, like if your dad is always being judgmental to you, right? If he's always saying, well, why you ain't do this, or you need to do this better, or you need to do that. We sometimes tend to take that behavior into our parenting. We really do, because that's what we know. That's what we grew up on. Like, if you have that strict parent, you're strict. Lights out by 7, you ain't going outside at night, even though the world has changed. But there are some things in parenting that are really just because it's a learned behavior, we begin to do that. So it's crazy though, because even though we didn't like it growing up, we didn't like certain things, we then still tend to do that behavior towards our own children, right? So here's one. I think this one kind of about me a little bit. I kind of was looking at that. It says, the mother who can't set limits on her own children's behavior because she can't bear it when they're angry at her. Or so what happens is you don't want to anger your kids, right? Because I'm telling you, it's this whole parenting thing is something. You don't want to anger your kids, so you don't say no to your kids, or you don't discipline your kids, or you don't control their behavior. And then it gets way out of pocket, and those kids learn how to behave a particular way, and they end up growing up being anxious or self-centered kids, right? Because you've never said no out of fear that your kids are going to be angry at you. Our job is not to please our kids. Point blank, period. Our job is actually not to please anyone but God. That is really our job. And we fall into these situations where we are trying to please people, our children, or whoever else in our circle, and then they get disappointed at us, right? And then it seems like that relationship is severed. But if we straight up, I tell my kids, my job is not to please you. I'm telling you that now. My job is not to please you. And my job is to raise you to be the best that you can be, whatever that is for you, because each child is different. So if I instill the basics of the foundation into you to help build your character, that I've done my job, right? So sometimes we think that we're supposed to please our kids because, I hear some parents say, listen, they got a fight out there in the world already. They already got peer pressure. They're dealing with a lot of violence out there on the street. They're dealing with all this stuff. The last thing they do, they need to come home and they need to A, B, and C. Okay, they come home. Home is a safe place, but I'm not trying to please you. It's just not going to happen, because if I find myself trying to do things to please you, I'm never going to be able to parent correctly, because there's a respect, there's some discipline, there's levels to it. And if we don't get that foundation, we're going to have kids that are very self-centered, kids that are anxious. And that's why, listen, therapists right now, psychologists, there is a waiting list for people. There's a waiting list for adults, extreme long waiting list, and there's a super extreme waiting list for children. Why? Because we are dealing with a lot of psychological issues that perhaps in the day that we wasn't really dealing with. But now that we want to address these issues, like the waiting list is ridiculous, right? So what can we do as parents to try to help get some of this, heal ourselves? That's one of the things that we could do. If we begin to start processing and understanding the things that we do and we don't do that affect our parenting, then we wouldn't have so many people in a psychologist waiting line, right? Another one, parents who work long hours at their jobs leave. Now, this is for those who have nannies. You know, I know a couple people who have nannies, but I know a lot of people who don't have nannies, okay? Nanny might be auntie, grandmom, cousin, older sibling. But it says parents who work long hours at their jobs, leaving their children with their nannies because they doubt their own ability to be interested in parenting or ability to love. So again, this is something that's technically is coming from your childhood, the ability to love, because love is actually one of the foundational things of hierarchy, a Maslow's hierarchy of law, is that, you know, love and belonging is on the list. So if you lack the love and belonging as an adult, and then you have children, it is very difficult for you to be able to impart in them that love and belonging. I remember, I didn't feel like when I was loved growing up. So when I had my first daughter, I didn't want her. I didn't want no kids. I told y'all that. I didn't want no kids. So the first 2 years, I literally was doing everything I needed to do as a mother, right? That's what I thought. I thought I was doing everything I needed to do as a mother. You know, making sure that she was fed, making sure she was clean, making sure her hair looked pretty, making sure she was dressed up, making sure that she just looked all that, right? But I was so detached from her, that love, you know, that parent, that motherly love. I had literally restricted myself from it because I was so afraid, or maybe I just really didn't know how to give it because I didn't receive that, or at least I perceived that I didn't receive it growing up. So I wasn't able to impart that into my daughter because I didn't have it. Like, I literally lacked the capability, I felt like, to love anybody. Because why? I didn't love myself, right? So that's another area that we as parents sometimes we're broken, and we're still having kids, and yet we're not able to impart to them the things that they need because we have not healed those pieces. So she was about 2 years old when I began to actually taking a look at my life and trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? She ain't going nowhere. This is my kid, and I'm hurting. So what I'm going to do? And that's when I really received God. Once I received God and I started getting the love from God and started this awesome couple named the Walkers. Like I was 21. And I met them through my sister who has passed away. I was 21, and they literally nurtured me and parented me. Now, mind you, I was 21, married, and had a kid. And I still was lacking the things that I felt like that was foundational for me. So at 21, they came in my life and they literally loved me. Like, they showed me what God's love was like. They showed me, and they parented me, and they nurtured me, and all those things that we do for our kids, where we need to be kind, compassionate, patient, all those things. They had those things. Now, that still was not an easy relationship, because I told you parenting is difficult. And me was a complex kid, complex adult, complex child. Because if they was on the show now, they'll tell you that it was not easy over these last 23 years of really stepping in and parenting me. My biological parents is still around. I love them dearly. I got spiritual parents, but I can tell you, like, the Walkers really took me in and nourished me so that I can really parent. So that's how I began to be able to parent my daughter. That's how I began to heal those broken areas of rejection, abandonment, lack of love, so that I can parent her. And then I just came on this parenting journey. It's like, okay, so if I'm out here feeling this way, and I know that there's other parents on this type of journey as well. So really taking care of the things that we didn't take care of as young adults or even children, because I think as a kid you don't even know what you need, you just know what you want, right? You don't really know that you need, a lot of things. You just want your parents, and you just want to you want to feel love. That's all you really want as a kid. Like for me as a kid, I didn't need all the extra stuff. Like I remember my mom going to the thrift store and getting me a purse for Christmas one year. That we were so happy. She went to the thrift store. I think it was Goodwill at that time, or thrift shop. I think it was thrift shop. Yeah, thrift shop. And I got a purse one year for Christmas. Like I was excited. This old lady brown purse. I'm telling y'all, the purse was old. It was brown. But I was happy because my mom got me something, right? So I didn't need a whole lot. The things that I needed that was lacking was love, security, and things like that. So I think parenting gives us an opportunity to heal ourselves, to recognize our broken pieces, and heal ourselves so that we don't damage our children or bleed. I say bleed over them. We don't, at least we give them a good start in life, right? So that they don't have to deal with a lot of things that we dealt with. As I stated earlier, parenting is, we have to be compassionate, we have to be selfless, we have to heal the unloved places that's in us, inside of us, and we have to be kind. I think a lot of us, not just in parenting, just in this world in general, like kindness goes a long way. Like, and if we could teach our kids how to be kind, and we can only do that if we have that now. If we have kindness, if we have patience, if we have compassion, if we know how to suffer long, if we live a selfless life, we can then now import that into our kids, right? If you don't have it, you can't give it. Like, you just can't. But I think it's so important for us to have it and give it to our kids, because this world, there's already so many, like, for example, I went to the pharmacy to go pick up a prescription for one of my kids today, right? And at the pharmacist, it was so much going on, because I don't know if you guys know, but like a lot of pharmacies are closing early or not even having weekend hours, because a lot of things are virtual now, and a lot of pharmacists are going to like insurance companies and stuff like that. So there's a shortage in pharmacists right now all over the country. It's not even just in one place. There's literally a shortage of pharmacists. I read an article because I was trying to figure out why the pharmacy hours keep changing. What's going on? So anyway, the lady at the front, she was like really, really frustrated, and then it was a situation that I needed her to handle, but I can tell like she was just really frustrated. The lines are long and everything. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna take a step back. I said, listen, this is what I'll offer you. If you can take care of this before the end of the night, and I'll come back for it tomorrow. I'm not gonna hold up the line, and I understand you're frustrated, but just one moment at a time, one customer at a time. And then she began to smile. She was like, thank you, because they just been screaming at me all day. Like, she was literally, I was like, it's okay. People are angry. People are frustrated. A lot of people don't have coping mechanisms. So just take a deep breath. It's okay. So I thought I did a good thing, right? I'm leaving out the pharmacy and everything, and I'm driving straight, and this couple they coming towards me. They're speeding. They got no turn signals or anything, right? And they dart out in front of me. And I'm just like, yo, you ain't got no turn signal on. You ain't do nothing. Man, I became all these bees. She stuck her finger up at me. The man stuck his finger up at me. I'm like, just because you darted in front of me and you snapped out on me. So then I was like, okay, these people need help around here. But I was thinking that if we raise our kids to have good character, kind, and patient, when situations like that come up, that we won't have a violent situation. So either one, they won't be doing the crazy stuff, sticking your fingers up, cursing people out, or two, if it's been done to you, you know how to just digress and let it flow instead of going off. Because I don't know if you guys seen about the news, but people go off for turning the wrong way, didn't stop at the stop sign. People lose their life for that, right? So I think if we train our kids and teach our kids, like, listen, life be life and things happen. That situation, that couple may be dealing with something. I don't know. They could have been arguing in a car on the way and they saw me and they got angry. I don't know. Not my issue. But at least if I can offer some kindness to that and digress from that situation. Now, does that make me weak? Does that make me a punk? Because that's what some kids would be like, yo, you a punk, you weak. No, that makes me smart because I'm still here to talk to you guys. I'm alive, right? Because sometimes situations like that, people don't come out alive. So that's what I wanted to talk about. That's like how we are imparting into our kids so that they don't have to deal with some of the stuff that goes on in the world, or at least they know how to, like, have some coping mechanisms, having some skills to be able to deal with the chaos and corruption. Like, if we're instilling these things in our kids, like, they'll have clarity and they'll seek first to understand versus to be understood. Like, it ain't about me. That person got an issue. I'm not going to take it personal, right? Because I feel like we live in a world today where everything is personal. Everything is, oh, you did this to me. Why would you do this to me? How could you do this to me? And I need to do this back at you. No. People have their issues. Just because it's their issues does not mean that we have to make it ours. And I think if we teach our kids young about that they will get along a lot better in the world. All right, so the other thing I wanted to talk about here is, as we're talking about healing our broken pieces, and there's a couple things that I wrote down that I think will be really helpful for us as parents. Like, for example, one, like, get curious. You're like, get curious about what? So if we pay attention and we notice that we're overreacting, right? And so we need to examine our own stuff, because sometimes, kids do stuff and they do the, I'm going to give you an example. My teenagers, sometimes my kids don't do what they're supposed to do. I don't think any kids do. Sometimes they don't do what they're supposed to do, particularly when they're supposed to do their chores, right? My thing is like, do the chores, my standard. I showed you my standard, right? So, I'm at school all day and I come home. The kids are home at least for 2 to 3 hours before I get there. They're teenagers, they safe, they're cool, right? I come in the house and nothing's been done, right? Their chores are not done. I'm like upset, like I'm livid, because I don't know about y'all, but if y'all come in the house, a dirty house, like that just irks me. It gets hair on my skin, that frustrates me. Especially when you know that I've given you a list to do, which is not a hard list. Like, you literally have to split, you got one chore apiece, right? So I'm driving 2.5 hours from school, right? In traffic. I've been at school all day, in clinicals, dealing with the geriatric population and things like that. So I'm tired, I'm exhausted, drove 2.5 hours. And I pull up to the house, and the first thing you do is you open your door. When I open my door, I see a mess, I'm mad. Matter of fact, I ain't mad, I'm angry. Like, I am so angry, because I'm just like, I can't believe this, right? So, but then I had to, like, I flipped out. I was like, I don't understand. I gave you a list, and it's not done. Frustrating. So, like, they'll start moving around. They start doing the work, right? Because they know I'm mad, right? They doing the work. But then I'm, like, still yelling at them. Why am I still yelling at them? They're doing the work, right? Because I just can't believe that y'all didn't do what I told y'all to do, right? But then I had to take a closer look, because, like, am I overreacting? Because they did. Is the issue is they didn't do their chores, or is the issue at hand is that, Donna, you're tired. You've been at school for 8 hours. You drove 2.5 hours, and you wanted to walk into a clean house, right? But this is something that they do. Like, sometimes they clean when they're supposed to, and sometimes they don't. So why is today a day that you're going to flip out? Like, why is a day that you're so upset? Because I'm dealing with my own issues, right? Because I've been driving for 2.5 hours in traffic. I'm tired. I'm frustrated. I just want to sit in a clean living room, right? So sometimes we can overreact, but sometimes that comes from, growing up. I remember if my mom came in the house when we were very young, and my mom came in the house and we didn't do what she was supposed to, like, she flipped out on us. Like, it wasn't no just yelling though. Like, I mean, she picking up stuff, she's hitting us with it, she's doing whatever she need to do to let her anger out because we didn't do what she needs to do. So I realized that as I was yelling at them, and keep yelling at them, and I'm upstairs yelling at them, and they're down. I felt just like my mom, I'm telling y'all. I'm upstairs, they're downstairs doing their stuff, and I'm still screaming at them. And they're like, well, why? They're trying to say, they're trying to answer me and do their chores, but I don't really need them to answer me. But then when I'm mad that they don't answer me, I'm telling you, this whole thing is crazy. But I came to the conclusion, like, I really was overreacting, because of what I was dealing with. And sometimes the parenting, that's what we do, because we have so many things on our plate, right? And we just want things to go the way it needs to go. And when something is off, we tend to sometimes go off if our chemicals in our brain decide to be higher or lower than they're supposed to be, right? So when I talk about be curious, it's more like examine yourself, figure out why we did a particular thing or why you behaved a particular way. Is it really about the kids or is it about you? There are situations there it is about the kids because I don't understand why you ain't listening, why you're not doing what you're supposed to do. But there are some times where I'm upset just because what I'm dealing with. And that was just the icing on the cake. Or what they say, the straw that broke the camel's back, or you done hit the last nerve. Whatever it is, that's what happened. So I think that if we examine ourselves, right, and we try to figure out why we are responding this way, could we respond another way? And it's hard to do it in the midst of it because when you mad, you got the fight or flight and you're going off. But I think it's important to reevaluate our situation. And I do that with my kids a lot. I'll go back and say, listen, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go off the way I did, but this A, B, and C. And then we have a conversation. And then they're so, oh, okay, I understand. We understand you don't mean that. That's not your normal behavior, right? Now, if that's not your normal behavior, they'll understand. But if you like that all the time, I don't know to tell you all, right? Also, the other thing is break the cycle by using your inner pause button. Like, instead of keep going off, just take a pause. Why am I acting this way? Go walk away. I remember when my daughter, particularly the oldest one, was really young, and a lot of y'all parents can relate. You know, toddlers, they just be sometimes just screaming for no reason. Like, you've given, they change, they're fed, you give them toys, you've already did some lovey-dovey stuff on that, and you just need to go to the bathroom, take a shower, cook dinner. You need to do something, right? And sometimes they just want all of your attention and you can't really do the next thing that you're supposed to do, right? Or do whatever you can to be the next best you. So I remember particularly one time, and I had told the doctor, I was like, her pediatrician, I was like, listen, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with her. She said, you're allowed to place her in her crib and shut the door. Place her in her crib and shut the door. I'm like, so then what? She was like, she's safe. Put her in a safe environment and you go take a pause. Because if not, you're going to go off, and when you're frustrated and angry, things happen that we don't mean to happen. So take a pause for the cause. So walk away. Sometimes, like when my teens get on my nerves, because I'm going to keep talking about it because this teen stuff ain't no joke. When my teens do, I go take a drive. I got to go drive because I need to calm myself down and look at this situation differently, right? So then I'm leaving. Now they teens, they want to call and text me and see if I'm okay. You ain't asked me that when you made me mad a couple minutes ago. That's another story. I digress. Okay. But reality is that we really do need to take a pause for the cause so that we don't repeat some things that we've seen in the past, some of the history that we've endured. And honestly, like, it didn't even have to be bad stuff that we growing up. It's just some things that just not good for the next generation or could be enhanced or changed a little bit, could be shifted a little bit. Because I think every kid, though, has dealt with things that growing up that you didn't like, that you really disliked and said that you wasn't going to do it to your own kids. I think there's some stuff that just happened. The other thing is that we got to understand how emotions work. I think I told you guys this story before, like of my 17-year-old when she was probably about 15. She was like emotional, like she didn't have the proper coping mechanisms to really express her anger. So she would like punch stuff around, scream and yell. She was like dealing with a lot of stuff. And it was around the time the death anniversary of both of her parents being deceased. And like she would just have a lot of anger and stuff. But again, because of my childhood, I used to be so angry because she would flip out and I'm like, you're not going to do this in my house. You ain't going to be slamming no doors. You ain't going to be yelling and stuff. You can get out. Because that's what I was told, right? You can get out. And then she run upstairs and I'm running upstairs behind her talking about, not in my house, not in my house. My son was like, Mom, you got to stop antagonizing her. Like, you got to understand, like, she's emotional right now and she always come back and apologize after she gets herself together. But you chasing her and running up after her and she emotional, you emotional. It is just chaos in this whole house. And my son, he was like, this not going to work. We can't keep doing it like this. And because I'm a parent that kind of listens to my kids, I did take in consideration what he said. It took me a couple of days to kind of swallow what he said, but I realized, like, yo, first of all, you're just repeating history. And second of all, if you're screaming, you're upset, and somebody come after you, that's just gonna make you worse, right? That's just gonna make you want to just go off, right? So I think if we start understanding how emotions work, that sometimes our kids gonna go off, they're gonna get upset, they're gonna do things, and our response and our reaction is really important so that they can learn how to respond appropriately as well, right? So if you flipping out on me and I'm not flipping back out on you, it's like, okay, she's not flipping out. What's something wrong? I remember my 15-year-old, the one that I tell y'all test my inner gangster. She did something. I ain't say nothing. I ain't say nothing. And she gonna say, "Are you okay?" I was like, "What you mean? Am I okay?" She was like, "You're not saying nothing." I said, "No, I'm not gonna say anything." Right? And I think that scared her more than anything, that I didn't even have a conversation with her about it. I just let it go. I was just like, listen, this is not a fight that I'm fighting today. This is not one of those battles today. But really understanding how emotions work. And I think teaching our kids how to understand how emotions work too. Because I remember probably about 2 weeks ago, my kids missed the bus. And they didn't go to school that day because their bus, you can't walk to their school. It's in a different city. So they missed the bus, and I'm in school. I'm in Trenton, New Jersey, right? And I get a text says, "We missed the bus, but we'll contact our teachers to get our schoolwork, and we'll have the house clean at your standard." Now, you can't argue with that, right? You can't even get mad. I just was like, okay. Not that they punked me or anything, but I just was like, oh, okay. And I came home and the house was clean, my standard. And I think it was so funny because when I read it to my sister, she was like, and they had to put your standard. I'm like, yes, because they know my standard is different from theirs. So really just understand how emotions work, and don't be so hard on yourself or your kids when emotions start flying. Just take a deep breath and back up. It's probably easier said than done. Again, I talk about reflecting on our own story though. Why we do a particular thing and why we do it, what's the reason behind it? Is it something we've seen? If it's something we experience? And I think sometimes for me, especially like when I reflect on my own story, it helps me to parent better. It helps me to say, okay, well, I didn't like how that made me feel, and I responded this way because of that. I don't want my children to respond the same way. So I think it's just open conversation and just reflecting on things that was done to you or wasn't done to you, or it was done right, it wasn't done right. Whatever it is, I think reflection is really important. And also de-stress. Like we get stressed out. A lot of people don't want to say that, but in reality, we do get stressed out because the mantle of parenting is so heavy. Like whether you're a father or a mother, if you're an active parent, right? And if you're really trying to make sure that everything is like done, the weight of parenting is very heavy. I don't know if you guys out there understand what I'm saying, but parenting there's a weight, because you have to make sure that everything's done, right? And again, it's not perfection, but it's just the weight of it, because you're praying and hoping that everything that you instill to your children, that they're going to take care of, right? That they're going to be okay. You got to make sure that they're eating healthy, eating well, that they're getting their physical, social support, right? You got to make sure that their mind, you're tapping into their mind and making sure they're okay. And you're tapping into your own mind to make sure you're okay. You're making sure you're eating well so they can eat well. You're trying to pay for all the bills. You know, it doesn't even matter how much money you have. You still have to make these decisions, right? As well as making decisions for the children to make sure that they're okay until they come of age where they can start making decisions for themselves. That's heavy. That is heavy. So it's stress sometimes, because when you see things not going the way that you were praying or hoping they go for it, you kind of, got to keep reevaluating that and trying to get it right. So it's stressful. So the one thing that we can do as parents is we got to de-stress. Whatever it takes. Like, listen, my de-stress is I go take a long shower. I put some aromatherapy shower bombs in there. They have bath bombs and they have shower bombs. I use those shower bombs. I'm telling you, I'm taking a 15, 20-minute shower, and I am in there with the lights out. I make my bathroom like a sauna. The vent is not even on. I don't want to hear the vent. I don't want to hear nothing, okay? No kids, no vent, no cats, no dogs, nothing. So I turn the lights are out, the shower's steaming, and I'm in there, and I'm really just breathing in the aromatherapy, eucalyptus or whatever you want to use to really de-stress myself. I've learned to start doing that as soon as I walk in the house, instead of having a conversation with my kids, say, hey, I love you, I'm going to go get me time for a couple minutes, so that everything that was on me can really be released, so I can really be available for them for wherever they need. Sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you're running, and I get it. But for me, that's one of the ways to de-stress. Listen to some music. Just take time to yourself, whether it's spending an extra 5 minutes in the car before you walk in the door, if it's going to the grocery store before you go home, just for GP, whatever it is. I think that we really need to find time to de-stress, because it's a lot. And like I said, the weight of parenting is heavy. And then also, not only that, we're teaching our kids to de-stress too, because again, we know the kids got a lot of stuff going on. We're not kids, but we know that there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, particularly, with social media, peer pressure, mental health in kids is at a high state. So that we know clearly there's a lot going on, and we know that post-COVID there's a lot of things going on. So even teaching our kids how to relax will be good, so they don't have to be in a therapy office too. What else? What else would I want to talk about? So basically, that's all I really want to talk about tonight, is really healing our broken pieces, so that our children don't have to deal with those things, or they don't have to fight those things. Really doing a self-evaluation for ourselves and say, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And why am I doing this, right? Why am I responding to this way? Why is it affecting me the way it is? Like parenting, I'm telling you, the reason why I said that we could heal through parenting, because we recognize some triggers. Why is this triggering me, right? Why is this conversation causing something to shake or move within me, right? So whatever it is, I'm hoping and praying that we as parents really start to figure out the areas that need healing and start healing, because if not, we're going to always be having these escalations in emotions, right, with our kids. And then we have to figure out ways to de-escalate. So if we deal with our own issues, then we can parent peacefully, a little bit more peacefully, a little bit more intentionally. Because at the end of the day, I don't think no parents want to hurt their kids. Like, I'm not doing to you what was done to me. I'm not really trying to do that. But again, if we don't know how to deal with that, or we don't know how to recognize it, then we're just going to keep repeating that cycle. And I'm going to repeat that quote. It says, in absence of reflection, history often repeats itself. So we got to reflect, right? We got to figure out what, when, why, and how, and then take the proper steps to become whole and complete, so that we can raise whole and complete children. As you know, we can look in the world and society right now. There's a lot of people who character is questionable, right? The character is just questionable. Integrity is questionable. We want to be able to raise our kids with the proper integrity and character, and patience, love, and kindness and gentleness, and be able to be assertive as well, right? We don't always have to be aggressive. We can teach them how to be assertive, and certainly we don't want them to be passive either, because we don't want nobody to walk over them, but we also don't want it to be too much where they don't get their point across, or they're not able to get the best, like the effective results that they want. So in parenting, we just got to reflect on our own self and figure out, what can I do and how do I make it better? Because at the end of the day, I just want my kids to be whole, complete, and out here and giving their best, living their best life in society, making impact, influence, really helping and serving people, right? So if we instill that in our children while they're young, and understand that, or the part that we play. So again, we're not responsible how we grew up, but we're responsible how we grew ourselves up as adults. Point blank, period. Whatever you lacked in your childhood, you need to get it in your adulthood, right? You need to figure out a way to make sure those empty spaces are filled. And for me, those empty spaces have been filled by God. Now, people choose however they want, but you need to fill it healthy. And for me and mine, our spaces is filled by God, because that is the only person who created us, knows exactly what we need, how we need it, and when we need it. So if you have some broken pieces in your life that needs to be healed, I recommend, I beseech you, I encourage you to start filling those broken holes and start repairing those relationships. And the number one relationship repair is within yourself and God. So you repair that relationship, and then you will be able to parent peacefully, intentionally, and that your kids won't be having to sit in the therapist's office because the way you parent them, period, right? So, thank you for joining Parenting with a Purpose. I am your host, Donna Janel. We are here weekly at 7 p.m. on Thursday. You can check us out on Facebook. You can check us out at YouTube. You're going to contact cmpradio.net, and you will find that on YouTube weekly at 7 p.m. Thank you for joining us today. Everybody, my name is Donna, also known as Donna Janel, CEO and founder of Parenting with a Purpose. Our strive here at the podcast is to reach every home, whether it's single moms, married, single dads, whatever it is, foster parents, whatever, just bringing the ownership and responsibility and nobility back into parenting. Get comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. All parents need some help and guidance, and I'm just here to be a guide.